Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party Network, home to a diverse range of shows like Nerd Nuptial, Missing Frames, Retro Perspective, and another show I love working on with my co-host Dallas, the A24 Project. You can find them all on the nerdparty.com or at the Apple Podcast Store or wherever you get your podcast fix. So this week we've got a bumper episode where we'll review Chris McQueer's Hings, share some travel tips from a recent trip to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and we discuss the cultural sensation that is Fleabag, where season 2 of the show will be landing in America this Friday. So joining me as always, and for your 99th episode, is Dallas King. How are you?
I'm very well. 99 episodes. Oh,
yeah, you joined all the way back in
coming soon.
Yeah, you joined all the way back in episode 69. So yeah, one to go.
Hey, sorry, I haven't grown up then. I was thinking I was just feeling old at getting to 100, but no, I'm clearly not grown up at all if I'm still giggling at the word 69.
Absolutely. Well, we all are. And joining us again is Kim Morrison. Welcome back, Kim.
Hey, thank you for having me again.
Yeah, I'm really glad to have you all for this sort of bumper conversations we're going to be having all today. So, today we're kind of talking over the airwaves, but on Sunday we followed through with an idea that came to us during a recent Avengers Endgame review. We decided to take a small road trip to St Abbs in the Scottish Borders, which is doubled as new Asgard in the recent Marvel superhero romp. So Kim, you were the literal driving force of our trip out there. What was your experience like? I know your mum was a bit confused at why you were wanting to go visit St Abbs. What was your experience like, and did her mind change when you reported back?
It was amazing. It was so beautiful. I've never been there before. I've been down like in the Scottish Borders and like down in the cusp of England, like Berwick and stuff before, but I'd never actually been there. And it was just gorgeous. It was amazing. And yeah, I think we were maybe the only people running around doing Avengers stuff. Everyone else kind of looked like they were just out for a hike, but it was a lot of fun. I think my mum's still as confused as she was. I did show her the photos afterwards, and she was like, "Oh, okay, cool." But yeah, no, I had a lot of fun. It was amazing. It's such a beautiful little like village. It was really nice to see it up close.
Dallas, you're obviously a movie location guru. You're an author on this sort of subject as well. What was kind of the experience like for you?
I really enjoyed it. It was nice. They've actually got proper signs up there now. They linked to they say St Abbs twinned with New Asgard. So they're looking to hopefully build on the fame they've got from the movie, and hopefully introduce a few more fans like ourselves to go down, although I don't know how many you'd be able to fit at one time. It seemed quite popular as a tourist destination with people along the coast anyway who were out for a walk, especially if you had a dog. Lots of dogs there. Sadly, we were too late to visit the village shop because it closed at 12:30. So I was hoping for a League of Gentlemen type experience in the local shop, but sadly it wasn't open to us local people, so never mind. But I thought it was great. We managed to fit to quite a few locations. We saw where Thor and Valkyrie would have had a chat overlooking the village, and we also visited the harbour where Hulk and Rocket Raccoon meet Valkyrie for the first time in the film. Did get a few odd looks from people as I took my barrage of cuddly and toys out of my bag. I had a giant Rocket Raccoon whose head was popping out like Paris Hilton carrying a small dog. But we got that out and had a few Funkos to take photos with. And, I got the last laugh because apparently Funko Europe really liked my photo and are sending me a prize bundle. So, hey, pissing about with toys in the sunshine can actually pay off, kids.
Absolutely. I look forward to hearing what you get in your free bag. And I was kind of curious as well, like now having visited it, can you see what maybe attracted Marvel to this location for a place like New Asgard? What about for yourself, Kim?
I think like the coastline, especially like down by when you looked kind of down from the cliffs like into the water, it looked very like Nordic, like mermaid lagoon type place. It was just stunning. So yeah, I can completely see why they chose there. It was beautiful.
What did you think, Dallas? Did you, when you kind of went there, this is like your first time visiting it, did you see St Abbs, this beautiful kind of coastal town where probably the most of the population are bikers passing through, or did you sort of see a place where you think, oh my god, I've seen this on an IMAX screen, I've seen it in cinemas in Paris? What was it like for you kind of just arriving in a place like this?
Well, it looked exactly like it did on the big screen, it did, it really did. And I can see why they picked it. I mean, it's somewhere which, I would never have been able to spot or pick out of a map in 1,000 years. I mean, I'd never heard of it until I think you told me afterwards that where it was filmed. But I can see, clearly the sort of Film Edinburgh and sort of Screen Scotland and stuff are doing a great job at, hitting people up with the right locations, because it feels somewhere that, yeah, you've got these sort of Norse, the Norse gods and all that, Vikings, whatever. They've got a long sort of heritage and link with Scotland, so you can see why it does. And also, it felt very similar to the location that I'm not sure where they filmed it, or if they filmed it on location anywhere, but the sort of scenes in Thor Ragnarok where Thor and Loki meet Odin, where he's sort of on the cliff edge and whatever, which is meant to be in Norway. But I thought it sort of tied in quite nicely with the look of it. So I think it was a nice sort of way to sort of to tie that all together, and of course to toast it with a shameless plug, Innocent Gun and Iron Brew, if they want to sponsor us.
Absolutely. yeah, definitely. It's not just your toys you had Scotland's finest brew, Iron Brew with you, and an Innocent Gun. So yeah, you were certainly well stocked for equipment.
Absolutely. So what about yourself? Did you enjoy the road trip, and what was your favourite location to visit?
Yeah, well, firstly, I must say I did love Kim's bangers that she had playing on the music playlist on the way there. So that's always what you need on a good road trip. But no, it was a really nice place. I think that even if it hadn't been sort of kind of used in the Avengers, I think it was such a beautiful day, and I'd never been to sort of that spot before, and sort of seen the beautiful coastline, and it was such a beautiful day. The sea just looked nice and clean. You just wanted to dive into it. It would be the sort of place I would just love to kind of walk along that coastline for miles and miles. It was it was really special, and to sort of see something that is so quiet and unassuming just play a role where millions upon millions of people have seen this on in the cinema. It's probably only like a few million away from being the biggest movie of all time, and this little place in Scotland that's just a short drive away from where we stay, it kind of makes you feel so lucky that so many of these Marvel worlds and realities are either augmented or completely CGI. Something like this is like, I can't see any CGI changes that they've made to the place to make it look as beautiful as they have. They've really captured it, and that was great to see in the flesh, and it certainly makes you feel proud to be from here.
Absolutely. I think there was one CGI change in town. It looked like, from having seen it sort of 3 times now, it looks like they were potentially building a new Bifrost building somewhere in St Abbs, but sadly it wasn't there when we visited. But I think you're right. I mean, you look at Infinity War, it filmed in sort of Coburn Street, Waverley Station, and then just sort of a 40-minute drive out the road, you've suddenly got this, picturesque little village, and it just shows how great Scotland is in terms of locations, and it's really starting to show in the terms of the different productions we're getting in Scotland. And you've got Hobbs and Shaw filmed in Glasgow a wee while ago, and they've finally, they talked about it for years about building a film studio in Scotland, and all it took was the Avengers basically bringing in all the money to Edinburgh for over a month or something, and then they finally looks like they're now finally building one on in the Leith Docks. So long may it continue, and let's see Aberdeen on the big screen though for once, shall we? Show some love to Aberdeen.
Where would you, if you were like a filmmaker, where in Aberdeen would be your spot to film? Say they were like, we're coming back for the next Avengers. Where in Aberdeen would you think would be a good spot to film?
Well, I think the Avengers should just have a fun day out at Cadonas. On the rides and stuff, and down by the beach, and well, I mean, you've got like Marshall College and sort of in King's College, like these fantastic sort of old granite buildings and stuff like that. I think it was Visit Aberdeenshire did a sort of post recently about if Harry Potter had been filmed in Aberdeen and stuff like that, and finding different locations that could have been like Diagon Alley was Belmont Street, and Hogwarts was a combination of King's College and Marshall College and stuff like that. So yeah, I think there's potential here. It's just we just need that sort of infrastructure in place that we can sort of accommodate things, because like I think like you had like Sunset Song was filmed out in Aberdeenshire, and Mary Queen of Scots I think was filmed nearby as well. But yeah, so Aberdeen itself has so far failed to lure in the big bucks. But who knows? Maybe one day.
So kind of staying in Scotland, the BBC this week dropped 3 adaptations from Chris McQueer's Hings onto iPlayer, so one of the most popular kind of books of the past few years. So they adapted Sammy's Bag of Whelks, Night Bus and Shift Swap from the book to kind of little mini movies that are about 5 to 6 minutes long. So Kim, have you read the book from what they've been adapted from, or is this your first introduction to the mind of Chris McQueer?
No, I've not read the book. I've seen a lot of his stuff on Twitter because I follow like 404 Inc. and stuff, but I had never actually had any direct experience with his work before this.
So what was your thoughts when you sort of watched these for the first time? What did you kind of expect going in, and what did you get out of it?
I had no idea of what to expect going in, actually. It's weird. I really liked it because I always like things that are really Scottish, and it was sort of the kind of Scottish dialect that I use when I hang out with my mum and when I get a bit drunk. Like it's the voice that comes out. So I enjoyed it for that. But I thought I don't know. I thought the humour was sort of the kind of things like boys in my high school used to laugh at and like roll my eyes. I wasn't very sure, especially the one on the night bus. I think when it gets to the end, I was like, oh, okay, God, right. So, yeah, I enjoyed like the Scottishness and the language and like the way it was kind of written and stuff. But it wasn't particularly my sort of brand of humour, so I wasn't super keen on them.
So Dallas, you work in a library. Were you familiar with kind of the books, or with the books or his work, or was this your gateway in?
This was my gateway, and I've heard of him before, but I've never actually read his stuff. But I'd probably be keen to check it out off the back of these, and because I wasn't really sure what to expect. It was your recommendation, and when you said short, I was expecting maybe sort of 10, 15 minutes. I wasn't expecting shorts, like sort of 5-6 minutes, but the sort of perfect sort of running time for sort of sketches, and each one had the sort of set up, the gag, and then the payoff at the end, especially the night bus one, which was rather disgusting. Actually, they were all, the first one was kind of disgusting as well, with the whelks, and just the sheer amount of vomit that was being spewed out on there was quite something. But I think my personal favourite one was probably the shift swap one, because it actually reminded me of someone that used to work at the Belmont who was very similar, and that he would always ask for people to cover his shifts but would never cover someone else's shift. He'd always have an excuse and stuff like that, so it made me think of that guy, although I don't think he ever went as far as shaving off his own eyebrow. But I thought it showed real promise, and it potentially could be something that I would quite happily probably watch like half an hour of short sketches like that. So it reminded me of like Chewing the Fat and Burniston, and just the love of the Glasgow banter, as it were.
Yeah, I really enjoyed them. What I kind of liked about them was that sort of Kim is right. It sort of reminds you of the sort of some of the humor you maybe laughed at when you were younger, and like the spewing stuff reminded me of like sitting in the cinema watching Team America, and the fact that when it went on, you just sort of laughing more and more. But I kind of thought they almost reminded me a bit of sort of like if Scotland did the Twilight Zone, that you've kind of got these stories where you're thinking, right, it's kind of it's a character that is on a night bus, this flat Earth thing. And then it's sort of like, it doesn't have perhaps that sci-fi twist, but it's got that twist at the end where it's sort of, you think it's going one way, you're sort of buying into it, these interesting characters, and then it just completely pulls that twist. And I think that's why it's kind of, what I like about it is that sort of 6 minutes, and in that time you sort of get a real feel for some of these characters, in particular kind of shift swap. You really sort of get into this guy's head, and you think, yeah, I know a person like that. I know what I'm sure we've all done similar things, perhaps not to that level, but in that time that you can sort of get a character that you're interested in, a story, it hooks you, you think it's going one way, and it pulls the rug at the end. And I think to do that in 6 minutes was really impressive. And I think the books are really well worth reading as well. Hings and HWFG, the follow-up, are excellent, and I think Chris is just getting better and better as a writer, and I'd love to see sort of hopefully the success of these shorts will go in different ways. And I think, Kim, as you say, some of these might be kind of a bit boyish, but I think, you know, if you get the chance to read some of the books, you know, they certainly go in different directions. So perhaps these ones were picked as maybe the most accessible ones. I think Korma Police is one I really want to see adapted to the next short one. That's a more sci-fi kind of one in a way, a dystopian future where chicken korma is banned. So that's one I'd really like to see kind of come.
I don't think I want to see that future. I don't want to see a future where chicken korma is banned.
Well, that says a lot about your eating habits then. So kind of our big topic today is going to be Fleabag. So for those not familiar with it, Phoebe Waller-Bridge writes and stars as the protagonist Fleabag, an angry, confused and sexually addicted young woman living in London. And the show is an adaptation of Waller-Bridge's one-woman show that she performed at the Edinburgh Fringe. So Dallas, let's start with you. You've only just completed Fleabag for the first time. What got you to kind of finally check it out, and what was your initial reaction once you got to the end of this watch?
Well, it was something that had been on my radar for a while. I think I'd maybe watched like the first episode, was it a year or so ago, but never managed to find the time to actually binge watch it. And then it was actually my wife. She just finished her PhD and was looking for stuff to watch, and she sort of came across Fleabag and then started watching that. And she finished, I think, the first season in a day and sort of raved about it. I think she actually asked her, she's in India at the moment, but I did say that I was going to be talking about Fleabag and I wanted her viewpoint so I could put it forth. And she said that the character hinges between you relating to her and hating her guts, but it's refreshing to see a program that represents a more realistic take on being a woman today. And I think one of the things that I like the most about it, well, just, you know, her performance is fantastic. The writing is great, but I think it was the fourth wall breaking I really sort of dug, and how it sort of brings you into the story and almost makes you implicit in her actions, because, you know, there are times where she does not the nicest things in the world, but you can't help but be culpable in that, and that's what I really enjoyed. And, you know, I hadn't had any sort of spoilers for it. I know I'd sort of followed it with everyone sort of going on about, everyone seemed to have a lot of opinions on Andrew Scott's character in the second series, but for me, it was when I got to season 1, episode 6, I was just like, I should have guessed like that something like that was coming. I mean, the hints were there to begin with, but that was quite an emotional sucker punch for me, I thought.
What about for yourself, Kim? What was your sort of first entry into sort of the Fleabag world, and what do you kind of think of the show?
It's one of those ones I'd heard about, and I don't know why I hadn't watched the first season, but when the second series came out, I was like, right, I'm gonna go back and watch the first series. So I kind of watched like the whole first season in like a day, and then the first episode of the second series, and then I had to watch it like a normal schmuck and watch an episode every week. So yeah, and then I rewatched it yesterday, everything for this as well. I just love it. I think a lot of programs try and portray like a really realistic picture of just like even just being a person, not necessarily like being a woman. I think things like Girls, like with Lena Dunham, have kind of tried it, but the characters still come off quite unlikable all the time. Whereas I feel like I really relate to like a lot of the stuff Fleabag does. Like you see her make really bad decisions, especially involving like the priest and things, but you're like, well, I'm like, well, I understand, because I would probably do that as well. I think you feel like you're right with the whole like fourth wall breaking thing. You kind of feel like you're her best friend and you're very like supportive of everything she does, even when it's not amazing. So yeah, I think it's a really good representation of just like people are flawed and they do daft things, and it doesn't mean that they're not like nice, likable people. And I think it's really good at kind of showing you that.
Oh, definitely. And I think like it's nice to see characters that, you know, we were sort of talking about Chris McQueer's things earlier on. It's like some of the stuff that boys would laugh at, but sometimes we don't get those worlds where some women laugh at things like that as well, or have crude or rude humor, or sexually objectify the president of the United States. You know, we don't get perhaps women sort of in that sort of representation role. And, you know, Kim, you're roughly the same age as Fleabag. You know, as of just now, she's 33 years old. how much do you kind of relate or recognize her representation as a woman? There's kind of been a lot of debate recently, and think pieces about the show and about like who it's aimed at, and where do you kind of fall in it? I know some people said that this is a middle class to upper class character. You know, it's impossible for most of the viewers to relate to. You know, I think there can be a debate had there. Where do you sort of fall on in this whole thing?
I think it's a really good representation. I mean, I'm 32 next week, so yeah, I am very close on the scale of age with Fleabag herself. But yeah, no, I think it's really good. Like I said, I feel like she makes awful decisions sometimes, but I completely relate to most of them. I think because you see it from her kind of point of view, you have to like put yourself in her shoes. It is really easy to like judge from the outside, like how you shouldn't do things or maybe how you should play stuff. But I think with her, because you're like kind of going along for the ride with her, you kind of are like, well, if I was in that situation, like how would I react? And I think a lot of the stuff she does is quite relatable. I think I love like her representation of like sex and everything, because like you said, it's not the kind of thing you see in a lot of programs, like her just very casually having anal sex with a one night stand, or like she talks about masturbating quite a lot. There's just buys her sister a sex toy, stuff like that. I think it's not like dwelled upon, like she's sort of hinted at being bisexual, like flirting with women or kissing the woman that wins the Women in Business award and things, but none of it's like dwelled upon. It's not this huge deal. It's not like, oh my god, she was talking about masturbating or like being bisexual or anything. It's just kind of like part of it, and I think it's a good way of doing it, like kind of, yeah, just showing the kind of things that women just go through in day-to-day life and in their sex life and things, without making this huge deal or like fetishizing it or anything. It's just quite normal. So yeah, I mean, I don't know about the whole like kind of middle class thing. I think the whole thing of like a lot of programs like that are around more like people in their early 20s or whatever. I think the fact that she is like in her early 30s and she's like, you know, originally she's kind of got a business that's failing and she's not got the best relationship with her family, and she's kind of stuck with a boyfriend that clearly isn't very well suited to her and doesn't fulfill her and stuff. I think it's like a good way to show it, like you can be in your early 30s and not everything's perfect, but it's still fine. So I think I really enjoy it as a representation of life as a woman.
Do you think that's where it's kind of important that someone like Waller-Bridge, that, you know, Killing Eve is getting incredible plaudits, you know, the same with Fleabag, that so very few of these, you know, I always think of things like what perhaps when I was younger, like, you know, Friends and so many different comedies that had a good mix of female characters, but there was rarely, if ever, a female kind of writer in the writer's room. Do you think that's why something where, you know, something like Fleabag comes along and it's like, yeah, that's how normal women would react compared to sort of the Phoebes and the other comedy characters of sort of the early 90s? Do you think a female writer can bring that perspective that a male can't, that we're so used to that male gaze when it comes to a writer?
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, yeah, it definitely feels like she's kind of put things in from her real life and stuff, and not like every single thing that she does is like played for laughs or whatever. It's just like some of it's just funny because it's just ridiculous, or you're like, oh my god, I've done something like so similar to that and things. And I think, yeah, that's why it works so well.
So for you, Dallas, you are in your 30s, but you clearly aren't a kind of female. Can you relate to Fleabag? Do you look at her and see things where you think, oh, that's a bit of me? Or do you see her as someone that you can see parts of your friends or loved ones in? What's your kind of connection with the character?
I mean, it's probably like one of those things. It's like, you know, are you the Fleabag group? You know, if you look around the room and you can't spot the Fleabag, it's probably you. But I mean, there's a lot of things. I think it's where, yeah, you obviously, you know, you can't completely relate or identify with, but there's a lot of things just in the writing, whether it's struggles with work, struggles with money, struggles with relationships, struggles with family, all of those things. Everyone has something like that in their lives, and therefore that's the way to relate to it. You know, just because you don't fit into the same sort of social economic class. It doesn't really matter. You can strip away that stuff, and basically it comes down to money, sex, family, love, all that kind of things which are universal. So therefore, I mean, I never had a problem with thinking. I didn't watch the program and go, "Oh, this clearly isn't for me." I found it relatable. I found it funny. I found it moving. So, I had no issues with it. And because I read that, I think it was an article in The Guardian that was sort
of course it was.
Yeah, of course it was in The Guardian. It was somebody's think piece saying, "Oh, this wasn't for me," and the same sort of person probably now jumping on the back of it and slating Game of Thrones for changing the Daenerys Targaryen from being this person who was going to free everyone, and then, oh no, she snapped and decided to burn everyone alive just because somebody didn't smile at her or something, or treat her like the lady she was supposed to be. As I mean, it's like, well, big deal, these are the ways. It's these things of yeah, you can relate to it, and I related to Fleabag, and yeah, because I mean, there's always something that you're going to be able to, and I think what she does really well is she's kept it. I mean, that's what she did. She has styled it after herself and the way she talks and whatever, that's how she talks, and that's, her background. If she had written it where she was playing someone from the north or something, putting on an accent, people probably would have had a go at her for misrepresenting that area of the world and whatever. So, it's you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. But I think she's managed to pull it off and create something that people are talking about. It's connected with enough people that some people are now mad about it, so that's always a good thing, I think.
Yeah, like you only have to look at, like, obviously she's coming back to the show is at an end now, and there's going to be a kind of few weeks of the stage show, and that crashed complete websites and so on, and I think a lot of people got into the show quite early in season 1, and then people kind of, that word of mouth that we've kind of all heard has kind of put people in the mood for season 2, and now it seems that it's kind of everyone's relating to it. She's a meme, a gif, people are relating to it, writing think pieces. That is the sign of success these days, when you're the subject of a think piece. But like for me, there's aspects where I can kind of relate to it as well, and I think that I'm someone in my 30s as well, I'm 1 year younger than her, but like there's aspects where I think, oh yeah, I can understand that. Or maybe that thing in your 30s where you look at other people and you think, well, I think I have kind of my shit together, but some other people do, and you sort of, I suppose it's the change of generations that, only a few decades ago, our parents, etc., were all kind of, had big houses, had all the cars, everything, all these different things, married, loads of kids, etc., before they were even sort of 30. And, someone like Fleabag is probably relatable to a lot of our generation that perhaps haven't found themselves in that place by that kind of age. And, I certainly could relate to that. And, I remember there was times where when I first kind of watched it, I think I had a day off or something like that, and I was like, I'm going to finally watch this. So I kind of watched most of season 1, and I kind of told my girlfriend, oh, this show's absolutely brilliant. I think you'd love it. I think you could relate to it. And then sort of she's like, oh, do you want to watch it kind of again with me? So we kind of sat down, and in the same day I'd sort of watched the season twice in a row. And like every so often we would just look at each other and go, like a wee kind of quiet look where it's like, yeah, that's something you would say, or she would look at me and go, that's such a Lee moment. And I think that's kind of the testament to the character, that there's something that all of us can get out of. There's, she's not a character that all of us will kind of pull something from, but whether it's your wanking to President Obama or how you treat business and life, then I'm sure there's something for everyone. But I kind of want to ask both of you that, we clearly like the writing of the character and the creation of the character, but if you lived in that Fleabag world, would you like Fleabag the person, Kim?
I think I would, yeah, because I think like I feel like everyone makes like absolutely ridiculous decisions at points in their life, and I just think like you can kind of always see her logic to things, even if it's a bit twisted. And I think like essentially deep down she is a really nice person. She's like a good person. Very few of the things she does, apart from repeatedly stealing her stepmother's sculpture, are out of like malicious intent. A lot of it's like mistakes or like kind of caught up in the moment or whatever. So yeah, I think she would be that friend that you're like constantly just laughing at, like texts they were sending you like, oh my god, your life is absolutely ridiculous. But I do think she would be an awesome person to be friends with.
What about for yourself, Dallas? Would you want to go hang out with her at Cadona's or go to her gerbil cafe and hang out with her? while she kind of takes pictures of herself. Would you kind of want to be in that sort of room with her?
I think so, and it's a guinea pig cafe, not a gerbil cafe.
Of course.
We've got to make that distinction. And there's cat cafes, dog cafes, so yeah, absolutely a guinea pig cafe could work. But I think, yeah, she's the kind of person that, yeah, I think you'd probably want to be friends with, but she would probably grate on you from time to time, and she's probably not the most reliable friend, but it would be someone like in Begbie from Trainspotting, where it's like, he glasses somebody, but then everyone's like, well, but he's a mate. So, you've always got one of those people who sort of like, you kind of know, and is not maybe the best influence on you, but they're still a lot of fun to be around, and yeah, you end up caring about them and wanting to see them do well, despite everything that they do, on the contrary. So.
One thing that kind of separates it from a lot of kind of comedies is that the show continues to break the fourth wall all the time, with Waller-Bridge almost being a human gift machine of reactions and responses. Do you like the idea of the show breaking the fourth wall? I know it can really split opinions. Where do you sort of fall on it, Dallas?
Oh, I really liked it. I'm a fan of the old fourth wall break, and I think it's also sort of builds into the sort of unreliable narrator thing, because she is sort of narrating it to the audience and stuff at times, and you've got ones like Patrick Bateman in American Psycho, where he's basically telling the audience this is exactly what happens, and then at the end you find out that no, maybe it was all in his head. So I think that's what really works. And I like the sort of the side eyes and stuff like that, where it's like, she's like, she is basically almost looking at the audience for approval at times. It's like, she can see someone doing something stupid, so she sort of looks at the audience and is like, I know, right? And then it's like, almost asking for validation for some of her choices and stuff like that, until the point in like the second season where it's almost turned on its head, when Andrew Scott's character, the priest, seems to notice her doing it. He can't see her talking but it's like he sees her like almost switching off for a second, which made me wonder if it was also maybe hinting at some sort of mental health issue or something, where if this was actually happening, if she was kind of drifting off from time to time and stuff like that. So, but I really liked it, and yeah, like you say, I mean, I've just had a look on Twitter. You just type in Fleabag, and it gives you like about 1,000 different looks. There's a look for any sort of occasion that you want to, and I think a lot of people were basically putting up a lot of gifs of her, basically at the fact that they could not get tickets for the live stage show and stuff like that. So that feeling when you're in a virtual queue for Fleabag tickets, and it's just a look to the camera and stuff like that. So yeah, no, I really liked it, and yeah.
What did you think, Kim, of the kind of the fourth wall, and kind of as Dallas says that in season 2 someone notices that she is constantly having a little shift to the left, to the right, and looking at something else? Like, do you think it's a bit of a mental health thing, and what did you think of sort of the fourth wall thing?
I love the fourth wall breaking. I think it's the kind of look that you give your pal when like a guy you fancies like looks away for a minute. It's that kind of thing. I think it's a really good way of getting to know Fleabag really quickly and quite personally without having it have all this like backstory or whatever. We get little scenes where it's just her, like when the first season starts and she's like, that moment when a guy texts you and you have to pretend you've been out and down some wine and stuff. Like, I think like that, just like 20 seconds of just like talking directly to the audience and the kind of like looks she gives and stuff, it just gets you really familiar with her character, and you kind of know what to expect from her without them spending loads of time, because obviously it's only 6 episodes a season. They don't have a lot of time to kind of set up who she is as a person, so that's quite a quick way to do it. I'm not sure how I feel about the whole like the priest catching her out thing. I know a lot of people thought that the whole like her kind of talking to the side thing was her talking to like Boo, because it wasn't something that's ever kind of shown in any flashbacks when Boo's alive, basically. So and the whole thing of like her at the end where she kind of leaves the audience behind, it's like she doesn't kind of, I don't know if it's like she doesn't need us anymore, or she just can't like deal with having them around. But I don't know, I always just kind of thought it was her just like taking a moment to kind of sort stuff out in her own head about how stuff was going. rather than a mental health thing. But I'm not entirely sure how to take it, but I do enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it myself, and I think it's almost like Peep Show as well, that I think Fleabag and Mark and Jeremy from Peep Show are some of probably the most likable or interesting characters of the past few years. And I think that reason is that because we can get into their heads, that their innermost thoughts and feelings, frustrations, shameful thoughts and ideas are all kind of laid bare in ways that sometimes that you wouldn't get in a 22-minute TV show, and I think that's a really kind of clever way of getting around it. I know for some people they think it is incredibly lazy to do things like that. I don't kind of fall down that way. I think it's a really good one, and I think it makes for what makes kind of Fleabag sort of stand out is those moments of, it's those looks and so on. And I know it myself that I work in an open plan office. I work around a large desk and I can see like loads of different people around me, and the amount of times that I almost can catch myself doing that Fleabag moment of like, I'm looking at my audience, a co-worker or something like that, and I kind of give them that look, and we look at each other. It's the raise of the eyebrows, it's the roll of an eyes, it's the something like that. I think it's again, it makes sort of the character very relatable into that, and it helps us kind of get into that world of hers that is so unique and becomes very relatable. And yeah, I think we have all done that thing where I know I have done that once before, where it's fake, that like I've got to pretend that I've had a night out and I've not just kind of got up at that moment. It's like in that first episode, it's like, yeah, I feel incredibly seen here. So one thing is, like, as great as Fleabag is as a character, the show has some amazing supporting characters, from the godmother to the sister to the father, and in season 2 we have the priest. So let's start with the priest, played by Andrew Scott, kind of famous from Sherlock. So what did you think of this character and his introduction into the fold in season 2, Kim?
I am not gonna lie, the first time I watched season 2 I had like a complete like sexual awakening with the priest character. It was ridiculous. Like, I think because she spends like 4 episodes just at like fancying him so much and not getting with him because he's a priest. I think you kind of feel that along with her. You're like willing her to shag this priest, basically, like, which is a sentence you just never think you're gonna say. But it's weird because the first time I watched it, I was very much like on their side. I wanted them to get together. He seems really nice and stuff. I think the second time I kind of watched it through, you kind of realize like he's one of those nice guy douchebag kind of characters where he knows how much she fancies him. Like, it's very obvious, and he is very flirty back with her. I think it's like quite easy to fancy someone who doesn't fancy you back. It's quite easy to like get over it. But like, if you fancy someone and they act like they fancy you as well, I completely get why she was like volunteering at the church and going shopping for robes with them and stuff, because if you get that like sort of positive attention back from someone, she obviously thought there was a chance that they were going to get together. And then the fact that they did get together and he still decided that he couldn't be with her, I just think is such a dick move, because like, he knew how much she liked him, that she was potentially falling in love with him, and like he said that he was in love with her as well, but not enough really. And it's just, I saw a lot of people on Twitter and things getting quite upset at the ending, because they were like, oh, if you're upset that Fleabag didn't get with a man, you've missed the whole point of the series. But like, I got quite upset at the ending, but it wasn't because I was like, oh my god, she's not got the man, her life's over. It's just because like, she knew he was a bad decision, and that he probably wasn't going to like leave the church and be with her, but you can't like help how you feel about someone. Like, she obviously really liked him, she still fell in love with him, so of course when he goes off, even if she knows it's like the best thing for the pair of them, it's still like totally heartbreaking. And I think that was why it was an upsetting ending. It wasn't like, oh, she's single and her life's rubbish because women need to be with men. It was just like, that is devastating, even if you know the person, like, you shouldn't be with them. So I did like him, I did fancy him quite a lot. I did post about 94 million different memes for the episodes where he told her to kneel. So I was very on board with them getting together. But yeah, he is a bit of a player for a priest.
So this show is fresh in your mind, Dallas. When you kind of had seen some of season 1 before, when you kind of started season 2, what did you think of this new character being added into the fray, and what was kind of your reaction to the priest?
Well, I thought that he was easily the most sort of rounded, 3-dimensional male character outside of the father on the show. I've just actually looked at IMDb for the credits, and actually even he is every single male character it's the priest, dad, bus rodent, and arsehole guy. Yeah, fuck me up the arse, which is a line which I'll never get out of my head because she says it about 3 times in one episode while looking directly at the camera. But I thought that he was easily like the best of them, but yeah, simultaneously the worst of them because I was not wanting them to get together because having sort of been on this emotional journey with the character for so long, I say so long, 11, 12 episodes on the course of like 2 days, but it felt like a long time, and you just wanted her to be happy, and you kind of knew that in her head she thought she could be happy with him, but everyone kind of knew that she probably wouldn't be. So it was that kind of thing that you wanted to be happy if she does get to him, but it's probably not going to work out. So maybe she saved herself some pain. But yeah, it is. I think everyone's had that situation where you kind of like someone and they either string you along or don't like you back, and it makes you want them more. And it's like, yeah, I thought it handled it sort of very well and sort of kept you guessing up until the end as to which way it was going to go. But I think she made the right decision at the end for not getting them together.
Yeah, for me, I think that first episode of season 2 where we're introduced to him at the dinner party was one of the most painful and hysterical kind of moments of the season. It was a great way to introduce him. I mean, kind of for me, what I found about the priest is that, like, I'm an atheist and stuff, and I was sitting there thinking, like, I was just being annoyed by him, like, and I was sitting there like, you know, you're giving yourself to this, you know, no offense to people that are religious, you know, what I felt was sort of a stupid cause, and, you know, get away from kind of that religion. If you want to be with someone, you should be with them. You know, that's something that's real and true. And, you know, I was sitting watching it with my girlfriend, and she was like, no, you know, he shouldn't give up on a kind of his day job and stuff like that, what he's devoted himself to. And whereas my feeling was, you know, this is someone that's probably come to the cause late in life, and, you know, this is maybe something that he is just fallen into, you know, perhaps something like going away with Fleabag or having giving into what he clearly feels would be a good way. And I just wanted him to get away from the church, but I do think it was a nice ending. I was kind of happy, and I sort of expected and hoped that Phoebe Waller-Bridge would kind of pass by sort of the expectation that they would all eventually get together, and I was really happy with that. But for me, one of my kind of favourite relationships of the season is Shan Clifford as the sister. She's one of my favourite characters. I love the relationship. What do you think of the relationship, Kim, between these two sisters? Is that how women talk to each other and treat each other?
I think not having a sister, I can't really judge on the whole like sister side of it, but yeah, I think the fact that they do have like quite a good relationship, and I think the fact that they can have like absolutely massive fights and kind of like the next day just be talking with each other is quite like realistic, like just where your pals in general. Really, it doesn't need to be this like huge thing every time. I think that makes them seem more human, that they can fight over stuff and then they're like crying in front of each other and then the next minute they're laughing. I think their relationship's brilliant. Like, they're obviously very opposite. Everyone kind of says Fleabag gets a lot of stuff from her mum, which you obviously never see, but things like her sister going back into the house and stealing the mum's sculpture, because the stepmom, sorry's sculpture, because she basically is horrible to Fleabag at a lunch one day, and things like that. And just her, so I think they do have like a lovely bond as sisters, and the fact that like Fleabag kind of stands up for her with her absolute douchebag of a husband, and just kind of tells her to, you know, like run off and go and like go after the guy you love, and like don't be stuck in your horrible life that you don't like and things. She's very like supportive, and just I think she's the kind of pal that you need sometimes. Just tells you, she's like, take the Sweden promotion, run off and get with Claire. Like that's like the kind of don't stuff doesn't have to be logical, just go and do what's going to make you happy. And I think Claire needs a bit more of that in her life because she's very like rigid and stuck with things. So yeah, no, I do love their relationship. It's quite sad when they don't speak for like over a year between the seasons, but again, that's due to the horrible husband. But their relationship just like gets right back on track in that dinner episode. There's not a huge like apology thing or tearful crying or like hugging and stuff. It's just like they just get back to it and they're back being sisters, and I think that's it's really, really nice.
What did you think of that relationship, Dallas? Is that one that you enjoyed? I mean, for some people, and for me in particular, you know, there's the talk of the priest and the other men that come into her life, but if there was a true love romance, well, not romance, but a love relationship in this series, it's definitely that one. What's your take on that relationship?
Well, I think it's a very probably accurate representation of a sisterhood. Having married my wife who has two sisters, one older and one younger, I will say that the things that they get up to and the way that their relationship is, whether it's fighting or then sort of loving each other and stuff like that, I will say it's very, very accurate, and I'll probably leave it at that in case so I don't get into any more trouble.
So kind of one of my other favourite characters in this, and one that makes me kind of look off to the right every time something comes out of her mouth, is the godmother, played by the Oscar-winning now Olivia Colman. So she becomes the eventual stepmom, and is very much kind of the real arsehole of this programme. But like for me, goddamn, she's hysterical. Kim, do you like or cringe at her character, or is it all together for you?
Oh, I absolutely hate her. Like, she's obviously very entertaining, like, on the screen and stuff, but I think it would be easier if she was just, like, flat out nasty. I think the whole very, like, passive-aggressive, smiley, chirpy thing makes her just worse. And you even see, like, and there's flashbacks in season 2 back to, like, Fleabag's mum's funeral. The fact that she's, like, hanging about, like trying to get the dad on his own, like at the funeral, and like he's clearly talking to his daughter, and she's like, oh, I'll just leave you two alone, and then she just stays in the doorway for ages, and just like, yeah, everything she does, she's so just, it's just horrible, like false smiles and everything, because I think she just knows that like Fleabag's dad's not really gonna say anything because he's clearly a little bit scared of her, I think. But yeah, she's so like show-offy, like all her friends, she's like, this is my friend who's like a bisexual refugee and things. Like she can't just like introduce people, she's always trying to show off like her whole life's like amazing, their whole like sex exhibition thing that she has. It's just, yeah, a bit ridiculous. But I love like the times when Fleabag gets kind of won over on her, just her face, she just looks absolutely raging, but she can't like break her mask and kind of like let it out. I think the only time she goes proper mental is when the priest kind of cancels officiating their wedding, and she was absolutely nuts. That's kind of the only time you actually see her like slip into probably the type of person she actually is on the inside. But yeah, it's fun. I mean, the whole thing of Fleabag stealing her sculpture like 4 or 5 times through the season is just, it's never less funny, because you're like, you always are just happy when she gets one over on her. So the fact that she just keeps taking it just makes me laugh every time. She's just the nastiest character ever.
I think people can debate whether Fleabag or Claire or other characters in this are real or relatable, but I think we all know a godmother, and like there's times when she's talking and it's like, oh my god, I've met a woman like that at a networking event, or oh my god, I know people like that you've crossed paths with in work or whatever, and it's just like, she's so painful to watch that every time she talks, like you're sort of just cringing, and she's just so transparent. And it's like the bit where they're doing sort of Claire and Fleabag are getting their portrait done, and like Claire is front and center looking to the godmother, and then she's like with Fleabag, no, turn around, I want to get the back of your head. It's like, why under any circumstances would you want to have a portrait that you're giving to a father of their kids where it would be the back of someone's head? And it's just like, hey darling, could you just put your head back the way? And it's just that sort of fake, horrible, really English kind of woman that you're just watching and you're thinking, oh my god, she is just painful. But I just love whenever she appears, it's like, oh, we're going to get a really good moment here. And as you say, that moment where she's introducing sort of her token friends at the wedding event is just great. And like when she's doing her sexhibition, and it's like there's a wall of like penises, and it's like, so girls, which one do you think belongs to your dad? She's just so inappropriate, but like she's just always so antagonistic, and I hate her and love her, but definitely one of my favorite characters. What about for yourself, Dallas? Where do you fall on Olivia Colman on this?
Well, Olivia Colman is, the nation's sweetheart. She's fantastic, but in this, she is just the absolute worst. And what I think makes her the worst is actually in part due to, I think, Bill Paterson is just wonderful as the dad, the sort of sad sack, soft, punching bag of the family. He's just there wanting he just wants everyone to get along. He clearly loves Olivia Colman's character, but he loves his kids as well, and even though they can be arseholes sometimes, but he just wants everyone to get along, and he's just sort of there in the background just trying to make sure it happens, but it's failing most of the time. But you've got that lovely scene sort of in the final episode where he's about to get married and is sort of claiming that he just happened to get stuck in a hole in the ceiling, and you finally get that sort of resolution between Fleabag and himself and stuff like that. And I think he's probably sort of been underrated in all the talk of Fleabag, and I just wanted to highlight just how good he was. And it's sort of his performance which allows Olivia Colman to sort of dial it up to 11 at times, I think, as well.
Yeah, like I totally agree that I think he's a great character, that you need someone like that, very much sort of the straight man, the sort of that you can imagine that having a daughter like Claire and Fleabag, and they talk about how the mother was very much sort of in that Fleabag mold. That's where a lot of her characteristics kind of came from, that you can imagine sometimes in whether it's a friendship group or a family, that when you have such strong characters and people around you, sometimes there's not that space for that fourth person, and sometimes you just got to be that one where it's like, I'm there, I will let them be themselves, and I will be that quiet person that is there for them when they need it, supportive, loving, but there's not that room for that extra big personality. Sometimes you've got to give those people their moment in the sun and the sunshine, whether that lasts decades or entire lives, and I think he does a great performance in it. So kind of, Dallas, when we touched upon this, you'd kind of mentioned that what kind of Fleabag almost falls into is sort of that British trend of sometimes ending after 2 seasons and going out on a high. Do you think Fleabag does go out on a high, and does it kind of follow that trend that we've got in British comedy?
I think it does go out on a high. I thought the season as a whole was fantastic, and sort of, it was touched upon earlier about how you should sort of like walks off at the end, sort of leaving the audience behind. I think to go back again would potentially maybe sort of dilute some of the emotional effectiveness of it. I mean, I know she is going back to do the sort of stage show again, but it'd be interesting to see if it's looking at like the early stages of the character, because I think she performed it originally in Edinburgh, whether it's going to be that show or whether it's going to be a new show, sort of looking at the character post the TV show. And it has been done before. League of Gentlemen live last year actually sort of extrapolated upon certain things that happened in the sort of 10-year anniversary, 20-year anniversary of the show. So it's been done before, but it'd be interesting to see. But I think it's definitely up there in terms of, you've got like the Office, Faulty Towers was 2 series, Extras was 2 series. Some of them had Christmas specials, so whether or not you can count them initially or not. But Spaced for me is one of the all-time one of my all-time favorite TV shows, and that was 2 series. And everyone always says, "Oh, you're going to do a third? Oh, you're going to do a third?" I think certain films have shown that if you go back to the well after a certain point in time, you're never going to be able to recapture that magic. And I think that's what she's made it in the first 2 series, and I think, yeah, she's probably right to walk away while you're out on top, I think.
So Kim, were you gutted that she walked away when she was on top, or are you secretly hoping there's a third season?
I was gutted when I read that it wasn't coming back, because I felt like I just got into it. Like I and she just discovered it, and it was like 4 weeks later it was gone. But I think you're right. I think the ending was amazing. Like, her character in the first season, she's very like broken and everything's kind of going wrong. Even by the start of the second season, she's got like her business on track. She's like building a better relationship with her sister. She's not just kind of shagging everything that walks. She kind of realizes that like she can fall in love with someone lovely. She doesn't need to be stuck with Harry, who's like the kind of safe option, but like rubbish in bed and really annoying and weird. So I think like she kind of realizes all that, and yeah, she maybe doesn't need the audience anymore, and you just kind of hope that she goes off into like a better life and a happier like relationship with her sister and whatever she goes on to do. So I think, yeah, I was really sad that it finished, but I think I would rather just kind of rewatch the couple of seasons to like keep that sadness at bay, rather than her like necessarily bring it back and potentially ruin it. So yeah, I think I'll cope, but it would always be good to see more stuff from her.
Definitely. Like, I think what my feeling was like, oh, maybe another season, but I think when you've got someone as creative as Waller-Bridge, you think, why not go out on a high and go do other things that, you know, she's proven herself incredibly diverse over the years. You know, you have things like Crashing, which I've only watched the first episode of. I need to finish. You know, Killing Eve. You know, the strongest parts of that show was her work, and I'm really looking forward to kind of season 2, and we'll discuss Killing Eve in a later episode. But you know, even she was a bloody robot in Star Wars, which was pretty amazing. So I'd love to see what she does next, and I think someone like her will always continue to create new content, and that excites me. So kind of for you guys, what are your final thoughts on Fleabag, Dallas?
Well, I think it was a nice sort of breath of fresh air in the UK comedy scene. I think it's probably one of the most relatable and honest sort of British TV shows about sex relationships, work and stuff like that since This Life back in the late 90s. I'm not sure if anyone, when Andrew Lincoln was Egg to me. This was before he became a creepy stalker in Love Actually, and then went on to be The Walking Dead and stuff like that. So I think it was great, and I'm never really that excited about a new Bond film, but I am excited to see what she brings to the role as sort of screenwriter, and hopefully she manages to bring some of that spunk and sort of diversity to the female characters, and hopefully they're more than just sex toys for Bond, and actually become as equal, I think, and that's what I'm most excited about, I think, for the immediate future. And in case Lando Calrissian, when Billy D. Williams returns to the Millennium Falcon, if he has a chat with Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who, you know, C-3PO said in Emperor Strikes Back that the Millennium Falcon did have the most peculiar dialect, and you know, she's got quite a unique accent, so therefore maybe we'll see a cameo in the new film.
Yeah, I kind of forgot that she'd had sex with Danny Glover in the Star Wars movies. That's kind of completely passed my mind. So yeah, she's on a kind of a roll at the moment. So Kim, with that thought in mind, what's your kind of final thoughts on Fleabag?
I loved it. I mean, I had seen Crashing before when it kind of first came out, so I was kind of sure that I was gonna love it, because she plays it's not a similar character, but it's a character who kind of doesn't have her life together in a different sort of way and everything, and again is very relatable. I think it's just great. It's like representation of women. It's representation of women at kind of this stage of your life. You just like don't have to have everything together, and you can be sad and things, and it's fine. Like, you just have to like work through it. There's a thing she says where she's at like a retreat thing where she's having to be silent, and she just breaks her silence to be like, I just want to cry like all the time. And I don't think a lot of TV shows kind of represent like just like how unhappy people can be underneath, even if they look like they've kind of got it together and are quite happy on the outsides. And I just think it's such a bunch of well-written characters. It just feels very realistic, and it feels like the kind of thing that you would like, just like your friends could get up to. It doesn't feel like American sitcoms or anything where everything's very like idealized and nothing feels like it could really happen. It all feels very like, yeah, like it could happen. So I love it, and I love all the characters, and I'm very, very sad that it's gone, but I did buy the first season on DVD, so I can just watch it repeatedly.
Absolutely. So it's been awesome to talk about Fleabag, but we always kind of wrap up with obviously Phoebe Waller-Bridge is one of many great female talents out there, and we're going to continue our 52 films by women recommendations. So Dallas, what is your recommendation of the week?
Recommendation of the week and possibly of the year has to be Booksmart by Olivia Wilde, which we saw as an unlimited preview a couple weeks ago, and is essentially a female Superbad, but it is like so much. It's honestly the funniest film I've seen this year, and the female characters are fantastic, well written. To think that this is Olivia Wilde's directorial debut, you would not have known watching this. It was so smooth, so accomplished, and features, Beanie Feldstein's great, Caitlin Dever's great, but I have to give a shout out to Billie Lourd's Gigi, who is for me one of the film characters of the year. The way she keeps popping up, I had no idea who it was. I thought this is someone clearly doing like a Kate Hudson, Penny Lane from Almost Famous, but when I found out it was Carrie Fisher's daughter, who's only had very small appearances in the last couple of Star Wars films, I'm very excited to see her future. And it's going to be definitely up there, easily in my top 5 for the year.
Absolutely. This is one I think people would definitely need to go see in the cinema. I noticed this week it's starting to appear on buses in Edinburgh, so it's kind of out at the end of the month, but I think it's going to be one that if people don't catch it in the cinema, they're going to fall in love with it when it drops on streaming or DVD eventually. So I couldn't agree more. A brilliant movie. So Kim, what's your recommendation for the week?
I picked 13 by Catherine Hardwicke, which came out in 2003. This was a film that me and my friends were obsessed with when we were in high school. It's got Holly Hunter and Evan Rachel Wood and Nikki Reed in it, and it is about this 13-year-old girl who is at high school, and she's really smart and on the honor roll and stuff, and she kind of starts feeling a bit left out with all the popular girls and stuff, so starts dressing a bit more provocatively and stuff, and hanging out with Nikki Reed's character, and they sort of end up getting into sex and drugs and shoplifting and things. And I just think it's a really good story of it, kind of, rather than her starting off as this troubled teenager with a troubled life or whatever. She's just sort of an honor student and likes playing board games with her mum and stuff, and she kind of just gets sucked into this world that with her pal, and kind of dealing with stuff that's happened before. Her dad really doesn't want to know her, and she's been kind of self-harming for a while and stuff, and kind of hiding that from her mum. And it's just a really interesting kind of peek into what life can be like for teenage girls. Again, it's the whole thing of seeming quite fine on the outside, but you don't really know what's going on the inside. So I really like it, and it's got a very good soundtrack as well that I used to love. When I say used to love, I still listen to it, but I used to love when I was a teenager as well. So
yeah, I'm 100% with you. I haven't seen this one in years, but I remember getting the DVD import from America when I was younger. I think this is a great film, and I remembered at the time that when she directed Twilight, I was like, I hope people will kind of check out 13. It's such a good film, and it's so quotable as well.
Yeah.
I always think of that, you want me to model my new thong. It's perfect for pooping on the go. It's such a great film, and it's great to see the cast, and particularly have gone on to do some great things. So definitely worth checking out. And kind of my recommendation of the week is Madeline's Madeline. So that's streaming on Mubi. So Madeline is kind of encouraged by sort of her theatre director to blur the lines between the characters she's playing and actual identity. This is one that is sort of in a few selected cinemas this week, but it's kind of streaming on Mubi Go. So if you get the 3-month subscription, or you have a friend that has Mubi, they can pass you on a copy and stuff like that. I would really recommend people catch this. It's a fantastic movie, and one I think is really going to catch people's attention, and it's one I'm excited for people to see, and I think it's one that it's the people that see it seem to be falling in love with it, and I certainly got a strong attachment to it. So definitely my strong recommendation of the week. So Kim, if people wanted to kind of reach out to you and give you a sideways glance, where could people kind of find you online or read your work?
I would follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I am at WickedSister69 on both of those. I write a lot for a website called That's Not Current, where we kind of cover a lot of pop culture stuff, and I mainly write about horror films, so I kind of dabble in a couple other things as well. But I always post. I'm always pimping out what I've written on Twitter, so if you want to read what I'm up to, then that is probably the best place to follow me.
Definitely. And Dallas, what about yourself? Like we mentioned at the start that your kind of background is sort of film locations and writing for that as well. So if people wanted to follow you on Twitter and also check out maybe
Well,
your
you
book,
can find
where
my
can people
book,
find it?
Exterior New York City, Discover the Real New York on Location, on Amazon.co.uk or .com or any combination of dot and foreign letters. And you can get me on Twitter at @champcelluloid, where I'm about to start binge watching season 1 of Killing Eve off the back of this Fleabag thing. I'm now hooked in. And it's nothing to do with the fact it just won like 2 or 3 BAFTAs. I'm not a glory hunter. I'm not going to jump on this glory. I was always on my list to watch. It just so happens I've only got the time now. So yeah.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to our Killing Eve discussion. Hopefully it'll be as great as this one. And if you want to find me on Twitter, I'm at Lee_Nostromo. So thank you very much for joining us all. It's been interesting today to chat with everyone. So thank you very much for listening. Bye.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd Party.